The states of New York and New Jersey are teaming up with Amtrak to save the United States' most important train line, the Northeast Corridor. Through a massive multi-billion-dollar construction program, they hope to expand, improve, and future-proof the country's busiest passenger railroad. And with infrastructure that's already more than 100 years old, it seems like this megaproject has been long overdue.
This place is a total mess.
We're gonna get it done.
So, how exactly are they gonna fix all this? My name's Regis, and let's find out. This is New York City, home to more than 8.4 million people, and with a GDP of 1.2 trillion US dollars, it's arguably one of America's most important cities. A vital cultural and economic center on the country's East Coast. However, these figures alone don't paint the entire picture. The city and the greater metro area surrounding it is actually even more critical and indispensable to the rest of the United States. The New York metropolitan area is one of, if not the busiest and most comprehensive transportation hubs in the entire country. Each day, more than 1 million commuters travel into the city. And that's not even counting people who are leaving the city or those that are just passing through. Take the North River tunnels, for example, which consists of 2 individual tubes. It's one of the few rail tunnels that connect New York to neighboring New Jersey under the Hudson River. Despite seemingly connecting only 2 major population centers, it's actually one of the most important pieces of rail infrastructure, not just in New York, but arguably to the rest of the entire country as well. Not only does it accommodate affordable and convenient commuter trains between both sides of the Hudson, it also serves as a vital crossing for the Northeast Corridor that runs from Washington, D.C. all the way up to Boston and bridges connections to and from Miami, New Orleans, and Chicago. Because of this, as many as 450 trains and 200,000 commuters pass through these 2 tunnels alone each day, making this 16-kilometer stretch of railroad from Newark to Manhattan the busiest in the entirety of North America. And though all of that may sound pretty darn impressive, there's a huge glaring problem that I haven't even mentioned yet. The North River tunnels were actually built 113 years ago, and it kind of looks like this today, partly because of its old age and the devastation of Hurricane Sandy back in 2012.
Right now you have a huge water incursion that causes electricity problems and moisture problems, and it affects the tracks and the ballast in the bottom, and in particular, sends a lot of delay signals even when there's not delays.
This is Stephen Sigmund, the appointed chief of public outreach for the Gateway Development Commission, who was actually kind enough to give us a short interview for this video.
But even without the significant delay issues that you have from the age of the tunnel, just because you have only 1 track in and 1 track out right now, you get enormous backups even on normal days. When you're supposed to have a 35-minute commute, it's a 50-minute commute.
But that's not the only problem. We haven't even started talking about New York Penn Station. Despite being the busiest train hub in the entire country, many people are actually not very fond of it, myself included. With its confusing layout and cramped corridors, it isn't quite so hard to imagine why so many people consider it the worst train station in the city. The solution to these problems might seem straightforward at first. The North River tunnels are slowly deteriorating because of their age? Well, then repair them as needed and upgrade them to reach modern standards. New York Penn Station's layout is very confusing, then renovate the entire thing and create clearer signs with directions so people don't get lost. That should fix the problems, right? Well, it would in theory, and some of these solutions are actually going to be done. However, building in New York City isn't really the cheapest or easiest thing to do. And we've already established that this section of railroad is the busiest in the country. Having it indefinitely closed down for upgrades would cause a major transportation crisis in the area. The city's roads would become even more congested than they already are, and New York would potentially lose out on billions of dollars in lost economic opportunities. So how exactly is the government planning to fix all of these problems without creating even more? Their answer is the Gateway Program. A comprehensive program of projects that aims to expand, renovate, improve, and future-proof the Northeast Corridor rail line between Newark and Manhattan. It'll be done in different phases that will make sure that even during construction, the entire rail line will still continue operating. The project was first announced back in 2011 by then Amtrak President Joseph Boardman and New Jersey Senators Frank Lautenberg and Robert Menendez. And over the years, they've actually had some significant progress with many different components of the greater project. Some have even already been completed. And to give a comprehensive overview, let's go over some of the key components to the Gateway program one by one. Starting off just to the northeast of Newark Penn Station, Station, not to be confused with New York Penn Station, the 90-year-old dock bridge that goes over the Passaic River will be getting an overhaul. Through the Gateway program, this movable bridge will be converted into a fixed one to reduce delays on the many train lines that use this crossing. The project is estimated to cost $375 million and is expected to be completed in 2028. Continuing with the path towards the east, the Sawtooth bridges, originally built more than a century ago, will also be completely replaced with 3 brand new bridges. These new structures will all increase speed, capacity, and safety along the route. Construction costs are estimated to be at $2 billion, and work will begin in 2024. Next up is the Portal Bridge. Built in the early 1900s, this section of the line is also showing signs of its age. And since it was built just 7 meters above the river, it has to be swung open to allow boats to pass underneath.
Portal North Bridge in New Jersey, which is this 113-year-old swing bridge that gets stuck and backs up the entire Northeast Corridor as a result when boats go through it.
The Gateway program aims to replace this structure entirely with 2 new fixed modern bridges costing as much as $1.8 billion each. The new bridges will allow uninterrupted transit as well as increased speeds. The first bridge to the north has already started construction back in 2022, and it's currently scheduled to open in 2027. Across the Hackensack River, Secaucus Junction, also known as the Frank Lautenberg Station, is set to receive a $1.8 billion expansion that'll allow for increased rail capacity and to accommodate another project, the Bergen Loop. This new piece of railroad will cost $1.3 billion and will enable different service from commuter rail lines such as Maine, Bergen County, and Pascack Valley, all the way through to New York Penn Station. With the current setup of the rails, commuters coming from these 3 lines still need to switch trains at Secaucus if they want to go to Manhattan. However, once the new loop is created, no transfers will be necessary, and passengers will be able to enjoy one-seat rides directly to New York. Both construction projects are currently in the conceptual planning phase and need a lot of funding to advance. Further northeast, the North River tunnels, more than a century old, will be getting a much-needed rehabilitation. As mentioned before, the tunnels have suffered major damages following the wake of Hurricane Sandy back in 2012, and the concrete surrounding the walls has unfortunately started to corrode. Overhead wires and electrical systems have also been badly damaged.
The cables that you use for the signal systems, which right now in the existing tunnel are these, gigantic 12,000 volt cables from the 1930s, and they're covered with whale oil. I mean, it's like, there are lots of old things in the 113-year-old tunnel that will be new in a modern 21st century tunnel.
Ever since, the tunnels have become a single major point of failure along the entire Northeast Corridor, contributing to thousands of hours of delays. But before repairs can proceed, the existing rail traffic has to be rerouted somewhere else. But where? That is where the brand new Hudson River Tunnel comes into play. It'll be the single most important component of the Gateway program, with a current estimated price tag of as much as $16.1 billion. It's actually become one of the most expensive public works projects America has ever seen. But even if that sounds impressive on its own, which it does, this figure alone doesn't paint the whole picture. While it's true that this is one of the largest investments ever made in rail transportation in American history, this investment is still well behind that of other countries. For comparison, while Europe has invested just over $1 trillion in rail over the past 20 years, America is at just $120 billion in the last 50 years. So the American rail network still has a long way to go. The plan to build a new train tunnel under the Hudson isn't really something new. In fact, before the Gateway program was even announced, an earlier project known as the Access to the Region's Core, or ARC, also put forward a similar plan. The project detailed the creation of 2 new rail tunnels that would alleviate the bottleneck. However, despite some initial progress and contracts that had already been finalized, the project was ultimately canceled in 2010. But why?
One word, politics. So, you had years ago, I was the head of public affairs at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey when we were building the first version of this, or the previous version of this, the ARC tunnel, right? And that was killed by an election. And the Gateway Tunnel project was obviously delayed for a significant period of time because the previous administration, federal administration in Washington, not only was not supportive of it, but it was used as a kind of a political football. And, that stopped obviously under this administration, and there's been enormous progress.
So just 4 months after the cancellation, the Gateway program was announced. And instead of creating 2 new tunnels with a total of 4 new tracks under the Hudson, there will now only be 1 new tunnel with 2 new tracks, plus the 2 rehabilitated tubes of the North River Tunnel, for a total of 4 tracks under the Hudson.
The Hudson Tunnel project first digs a new tunnel under the Hudson about a half mile from the existing tunnel so that service is not disrupted at all, because the system right now is such a huge part of the transportation infrastructure in this region and this nation that you can't disrupt it really any day. So we're first building a new tunnel, a modern 21st century tunnel connection between Newark and Penn Station, New York, and then 1 tube at a time, fully rehabilitating the existing 113-year-old tunnel so that you ultimately have 4 good as new tubes that can serve this region and this nation and millions of riders and commuters for the next 100 years.
Since most of the construction will be done underground, there really won't be much of an impact to day-to-day life on the surface. The new tunnel will even be a little longer than the old ones to avoid as much developed space on the surface as possible.
Look, nobody has put a heavy rail tunnel in under the Hudson in 113 years. So the challenges and complexities are enormous. We did a bunch of geotechnical tests prior to the beginning of the work so that we knew where all the utilities are, because if you dig 5 feet in the wrong direction, you cut off power for tens of thousands of people.
That would certainly not be good. So, since this is a very complex megaproject, massive investments from various sources are required, which is one of the reasons why it's been delayed for so many years.
We already have $4 billion federal dollars accounted for, and all of the state and local shares accounted for, and we have a commitment for $7 billion additional federal dollars, which we are working to finalize by the end of the summer. So, all in all, by the end of this year, you'll have a $16 billion commitment, $12 billion of which is federal dollars. It was the biggest federal investment in a mass transit project in modern history. And you will have very significant construction underway so that the project, essentially, there's no turning back on by the end of this year.
It's the beginning of finally constructing a 21st century rail system. It's a multi-billion-dollar effort between the states and the federal government. But we finally have the money and we're going to get it done.
And some of this construction has already started on both sides of the Hudson in November of 2023. In New York, the concrete casing project in Hudson Yard is well underway. This part of the construction will be vital, as it'll be where the new Hudson River Tunnel will be connecting into New York Penn Station and Moynihan Train Hall. Over on the New Jersey side, a project to bridge under a local highway to make way for the new tunnel has also begun.
But what we want to do is get to a point by the end of this year where there really is no turning back, where the cost of turning back would be so high compared to the obvious need of continuing forward. And that's why we're moving so quickly to finalize the funding, to keep the construction moving forward on both sides of the Hudson that we started last year, and to put new heavy construction in the ground before the end of the year so that there really is no turning back on this project this time.
As for the most recent plans, the new tunnel should be finished by 2035 and the old tunnels fully renovated by 2038. But there's one final major component of the Gateway program that we haven't talked about yet: a complete overhaul and expansion of the much-hated New York Penn Station. Though there have been so many different plans and attempts over the years to make this infamous station better, one concept has actually managed to be approved by the state government. In 2021, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced plans for the reconstruction of Penn Station. In the new $7 billion design, the station will be transformed into a single-level 23,000 square meter facility. One major design element of this new terminal will be the introduction of more natural light into the station, a stark difference compared to the dark and claustrophobic station that exists today. The redesign would also include plenty of new entrances, escalators, and tunnels that would overall improve the accessibility of the station. The idea behind this new design is that with the additional open space and improved interior layout, New York Penn Station's capacity would increase to accommodate more passengers. And this increased capacity is much needed. Since this version of the station was built in the 1960s, its footprint hasn't been increased by a single square foot, while the passengers have actually tripled. So these new upcoming changes are very much welcome, and have long been demanded by New York commuters.
I wish it was brighter. I wish it was more colorful.
This place is a total mess.
A little dingy and run down.
They'll definitely transform Penn Station into a much better experience for its passengers. However, this redesign seems to be lacking some of the changes necessary to answer one of Penn Station's most pressing issues. The new station, once completed, may be able to handle twice the passenger capacity, but the same can't be said for the trains themselves. New York Penn Station would still be constrained by the limited numbers of station tracks that were built way back in 1910. And that's not even including the increased number of trains that'll be brought to New York Penn Station and Moynihan Train Hall once the Hudson Tunnel project and the rest of the Gateway program is completed. Governor Hochul seems to be well aware of this issue and has firmly stated that these critical improvements will still happen eventually. However, the main priority as of today will be transforming the station into a place that people won't actually hate to be in. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, well, that's up to you. But it must also be said that despite this focus on passenger experience, the redesign put forward is still not final. And there have also been preliminary plans outlined that include new train tracks and platforms. But without going into further detail here, none of these plans are final and still subject to change. So how will all of these changes actually impact the lives of people living in and around New York City?
We're going to see a major transformation in how people commute and get around this region. Right now, you have 200,000 people a day using this 113-year-old system that is delay-prone, old, creaky. Even when it runs as it's supposed to, it runs very, very slowly because it's a choke point for the entire Northeast corridor. So when you put an end to that and you have reliable, resilient, faster service, because it will be faster just because it'll be on time, and you won't have all these delays or these showing up in the evening and suddenly having to wait an hour in Penn Station because the tunnel is down or the bridge is down. We believe that people are going to look back and say, we can't believe that we tolerated the condition that we've tolerated for so long of this more than century-old system.
So what do you think about the Gateway program? Do you think it'll actually be able to solve all of the problems it's trying to fix? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this in-depth video, make sure to subscribe to MegaBuilds for more. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.